Welcome to Right on Track, a songwriting podcast. Thanks to Tone for tuning in. I'm Demi Michelle Schwartz, and I'm thrilled you're joining me on my songwriting journey. So kick back and relax, don't fall flat, and remember, stay right on track. Hello everyone, welcome back to Right on Track. I'm so excited because I have three very special guests joining me today. Brett Boyett, Troy Johnson, and Scott Lindsey, also known as the Nashvillains. Hey guys.
Hey, how you doing, Demi?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you guys doing?
Great. Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Fantastic. This is going to be such a blast. You're the first band I'm having on the show, and I'm very excited. And today we're going to be talking all about your journey from writing for commercial country stars to writing for your own outlaw country band. And I'm so excited for this. But before we get into that, can each of you take turns introducing yourselves and sharing a little bit about your songwriting journeys?
Yeah, sure. Scott, you want to go first? Let's go left to right.
Okay. Keep everything in an orderly fashion.
Yeah.
My name is Scott Lindsey. I'm what you call the utility guy in the band, which means I play multiple instruments.
He usually says the eye candy.
And I'm the eye candy, but fortunately you can't see that right now. You know, I'll send pictures later.
I'm sure your glory's coming through on mic as well.
But my songwriting journey started very early. My dad's a singer-songwriter, and I'm from Kentucky, by the way. A place called Beaver Dam, and a lot of bluegrassers and thumb pickers up there. But my dad used to write when I was younger with a guy named Tommy Collins, who wrote New Patches for Mel Tillis and Roots of My Raisin Run Deep for Merle Haggard. And Tommy used to come up and we'd all go fishing, and he and Dad would write, and I got the bug then, and I would just go back in my room and write out my "I love you, you love me" kind of thing, and bring it in there and into the kitchen. They would critique it and send me back to my room to fix fix all the red marks on it.
Cool.
Yeah. So I mean, I was always around it. I've always been around it. I mean, I didn't know any better. You know, I thought everybody, played music, wrote music, played baseball and basketball, So, not right out of high school, but not long after high school, I came to Nashville and went to Belmont and studied classical and jazz guitar. But I was always writing. Thought at that time I wanted to play lead guitar for some people. And I did get a couple of jobs, but then I ran into some people like Brent Mason and those guys. And I was like, I can write a song too.
There's got to be another way to do this music.
Yeah. So I was always writing, and me and my buddy Josh Osmer used to write a lot back then. And of course, he's one of the biggest writers in the world now. Good for Josh, Good for Josh. I hope to be there soon.
Yeah. I don't hear any animosity in your voice. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Good for Josh.
Good for Josh.
Yeah, I'm so proud of him.
Right, did so well.
No, I'm really happy for him. I'm really happy for my old buddy. But along that same time, I got a record deal on my own, and I had a song out called "You Only Call Me When You're Drunk," which I wrote with Josh and a guy named Jody Lineberry, and had a little success with that, and it sent me around the country a couple times, and came home from being on tour out west and walked in the office there at the little label I was signed to, and they were putting stuff in boxes. So.
And not just your record.
Yeah, that's right. So back to writing, I went all the time, and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. And then I ran into a guy named Frank Larry, and that led me to Troy Johnson, because Troy was already writing for Frank's company. And so we started writing, and Frank and his wife, Karen, sent me out to LA to do a songwriters festival not long after I signed with the company called the Durango Songwriters Festival out in Burbank, California. And that's where a mutual friend of ours named Tim Gates introduced me to Brett Boyett. And while we were writing,
And the rest was downhill from
yeah,
there.
while we were writing, we got talking about
Yeah.
and
or an uphill slog, one of the two.
yeah. And the rest is history or misery. The rest is misery.
You want to take it from there?
That's me.
That's
in
a
a
good.
nutshell.
That's a good segue.
I'll hand
into
it
Brett's.
off. Yeah.
Sure. This is Brett Boyett. I am the guitar player / producer of the band. And, I was writing songs in college. I was writing songs forever, but I was playing all over Texas. I went to Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas. And I met George Jones's bass player. And he was the stepdad of a buddy of mine. And he heard some of my songs. He's like, "Hey, man, when you graduate, you should really move to Nashville." I was like, "All right, I've got nothing else going on. That sounds like a good idea." I had a degree in forensic archaeology, and the heck am I going to do with that? So I may as well go play the clubs. So I ended up getting mentored by a guy named Vernon Rust, who was writing stuff with Keith Urban at the time, and I was hanging with those guys, and they were kind of showing me how to write songs. And Vernon was staying at my place and kind of writing with me every day and mentoring me. Then I ended up writing country for like 4 years. Then I moved to New York, and then I got a call from a composer / songwriter who's a Hall of Fame songwriter out here named Steve Dorff. He had heard some of my music through his wife, because my cousin shared it with his wife, they were in the same Broadway show. And Steve heard it, and he called me and said, "Hey, would you want to move out to LA and work for me doing TV?" And I said, "Well, I've never thought about doing TV." See, there's a theme here.
Yeah.
So
all the puzzle pieces are coming into place, aren't they?
Yeah, everyone else decides my fate. Yeah. So I decided to move to LA. I was like, well, because I knew Steve, and I was a big fan of his writing and composing. So I was like, yeah, well, heck yeah, I'll move to LA. And I moved to LA and started working with him. The first show I did with him, which he was the composer on, was Reba. And I was the music editor for him, and ended up working for him. We did several shows together, several series. And I worked with Rick Murata, who's a really, really famous drummer and composer. We did Everybody Loves Raymond. And then I worked with Snuffy Walden, did Friday Night Lights, and a bunch of other shows and a lot of movies. And I started composing more myself. I was always writing songs and producing people all along the way and learning from these guys who are just, geniuses in their fields. And it kind of it opened some doors for me to write some songs for some artists and get an agent and things like that. And ended up writing some pop stuff, a lot of pop stuff. I had a burlesque swing band at the time. We toured with the Brian Setzer Orchestra all over the country. And I wrote for artists like Drake Bell and had singles with him. And then I started writing for different movies and started pitching stuff back to Nashville again. I was always going back and forth to Nashville. And I was sharing a studio with Paul Overstreet and Nash Overstreet in LA. And his daughter, Harmony, was pitching songs. So I sent her a song I'd written with Nash, her brother, for a film. And I said, "This is going to be in the film. It's going to be like the single of the film. But, if you want to pitch it around," it was kind of an R&B production that we did on it. And she said, "Give me a day and we pitch it around." And she called us the next day and said, "Hey, I got this cut. This is going to be Cassidy Pope cut this over at Big Machine." And then like 2 weeks later, they called us and said it's going to be her single. That was a song. Yeah, so that was a song called "I'm Invincible."
Oh, I love that song. Wow.
Yeah, thanks. And then I started working with, there was a kid from my hometown who I actually met him, which is weird enough, through Ken Calais. And his name is Jackson Odell. He was 16. And Jackson was this amazing singer, songwriter, guitar player, vocalist, incredible. And I started working with him. And his neighbor was a director named Bethany Ashton Wolf. And she gave Jackson a script that she was thinking of turning into a movie. And because she loved his voice so much and his songwriting, and he was working with me. So he asked, and he didn't know how to score. So he asked me if I would be interested in doing a movie with him and writing all the music. And it was not greenlit at that time. And I was like, well, yeah. So we wrote like 14 songs to the script, and we ended up performing it for the production company, and they greenlit it right there on the spot. And I ended up doing all the music with Jackson and a couple other writers. Paul Overstreet and I wrote like 2 songs for it, and a couple other people. And Scott and I tried to write a song for it. We almost got a song in there.
Well, you got to delve a little bit more into that story about performing for the production company, because that's unique, and that's probably, it never happened before, and it probably has never happened since.
No, that was a very unique idea, and Bethany actually had the idea to do that. So Jackson, because he was such an amazing vocalist, she said, hey, would you guys want to perform? And I said, well, I'll play guitar, but Jackson's an amazing vocalist. Let's let him be the singer. And then we hired this girl who's a friend of mine, Julia Harriman, and who's now what's the Broadway play? Hamilton. She's the one of the leads in Hamilton.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
But the unique part is that you guys performed in the office.
In the office with all the suits sitting there looking at us.
Right. Yeah, it's not like you performed at a club. You had to go to the boardroom. Yeah, the boardroom. The conference room.
And it was a boardroom, and they were all sitting there looking at us, and they were like, well, what are you guys doing? We're going to perform for you. They're like, okay, that's weird. So
I bet they had a blast though. That never happens to them.
It never happened.
Sure.
And we finished, and right there on the spot, they said, this film's greenlit. So right after that, I ended up writing for and producing like Lauren Elena and Mickey Guyton and Travis Tritt and Josh Turner. Worked with Little Big Town, a lot of different acts for that movie. It was a movie called Forever My Girl. And then I ended up scoring it as well. And that led me to meet Scott. And Troy at the time, this is the full circle, is Troy was doing all the demos for me because he was demo singing in Nashville.
Yeah, doing the stunt singing so that then it could be replaced by real artists.
Yeah, well, no. But I had never met Troy in person. I was referred to him. I wish I could remember who referred me to you.
Yeah.
Anyways, I was referred to him through somebody, and I loved his voice. And I was like, man, if I ever move back to Nashville, I'm going to start a band. I had this idea, Nashvillains. I was like, man, I want to use that guy's voice and get that guy to sing.
Yeah, and Brett, while we were writing out there that day, Brett got telling me all this, and he actually played me some of the demos, and I recognized the voice. I was like, is that Troy Johnson singing? He said, yeah, man, when I come to Nashville, I want to get this guy singing in my band. I'm like, well, hell, I'll call him right now and see if he wants to do it.
Yeah.
We write for the same company. His office is across the hall.
Yeah.
Too bad I didn't pick up.
Yeah.
I looked at I sent it to voice. I saw Scott's name. I sent it to voice.
Yeah. He still doesn't answer my calls.
Or text.
Yeah. So go ahead, Troy. That's kind of where I leave off.
That's the handoff, man.
Yeah. So I grew up in Houston, Texas, more specifically Katy, Texas. I spent most of my formative years. I've always been in music, always been singing ever since I was a little tyke. And it became pretty clear early on that it was at least something that is plausible for me to try to do. And it's really the only thing I've ever done. And, my parents were in bands when I was a kid. And then so when I started growing up, I played keyboard. That's where I learned to play an instrument was keyboard first. Through high school, wrote some songs, but they really didn't get into that until I went to college. I went to Belmont University here in town. And I didn't even know that you could just be a songwriter. And when I found out that, and this is sort of unique for, at least back then, it was more unique to Nashville, that you could just literally write songs and make a living just doing that for other artists. And, when I found that out, I was like, well, that's really what I want to do. I'd rather sit on my ass than do the to go out and tour. And I was like, that sounds really good. I had this, vision of a tortured artist sitting in a room by himself with a blank piece of paper. And so that's what I did for a long time. And probably about 18 months out of college, I secured a publishing deal with a little company called Homesick Cowboy Music. And that was Brett Beaver's company with a guy named Alex Torres, and we had a co-pub with another guy, Marshall Morgan, and that was my first publishing company, or at least my first staff writing gig. And I had brought in the song "Some Days You Gotta Dance" to that catalog, and all the guys really worked hard to get that cut, and it finally got cut by Keith Urban, probably about, I don't know, 5 years later, maybe in the late 90s. And then the Dixie Chicks.
Overnight in Nashville time.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. He was a success overnight after about 7 years. But then the Chicks did the Chicks cut it from Keith Urban. Keith played on the record with them, and it was a feather in my cap for sure. And then the Chicks did a Crossroads, CMT Crossroads with James Taylor, and he ended up putting it on a record of his. So to be a writer that James Taylor has cut one of his songs is a pretty rare thing to have. And I tell everybody I know that any chance I get. You do realize that James Taylor cut one of my songs, right? And then I usually win the battle on the lines. Yeah. But anyway, so I bounced around the town, still bouncing around the town, but I've had songs cut by who have I had songs cut by?
Montgomery Gentry.
Yeah, but thank you, Montgomery Gentry. I was trying to think of Trace Atkins, and
yeah, I know your resume better than you do.
You do. Well, you're better at name dropping than I am.
Let's not forget James Taylor.
Yeah, we can circle back to James Taylor if you like. But anyway, so I had no plans of being in a band, starting a band. I was a solo artist for most of my career, and when the guys approached me about it, I was like, sure. I mean, that sounds like
sure, as long as you don't use my face.
A fun thing to do. Hey, that's an inside joke that nobody gets. Throughout my career, I started singing demos for a bunch of people, which is basically how Brett got my name. I've been a demo singer in town for longer than I care to admit at this point.
Denim demo?
Yeah.
Yeah. It might be a song title right there.
Thank you.
I wonder if I got your name through Chris Burgess.
Might have.
Yeah.
Could be.
Oh.
Anyway, so Brett and Scott approached me, and really the first thing that we really needed to figure out was, can we write a song together? We're not gonna. I mean, none of us really wanted to be a band that records other people's songs primarily.
Well, and that's the only way you could find out if you have any actual chemistry.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to find out if you got chemistry, of course. Yeah.
So songwriting is like dating. It really is.
Yes, it is.
It's not. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's
right.
Nothing personal.
Yeah, and you have some partners that are more like marriages.
That's right.
Yeah. So, but
is that why you don't answer my calls?
Yeah, I'm trying to distance myself from you.
My shrink has said to walk away slowly.
Yeah, walk away slowly. That's good advice.
Back away slowly.
That's good advice. So anyway, we all got together and we ended up writing a pretty good freaking song.
Yeah. Which is what it was.
There to Catch Me, which is our current single.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And from there, we just kept writing, and this project sort of grew. And as Brett put together all these tracks and sort of flushed out our production ideas after we wrote songs, people started noticing what he was doing and sticking their heads in and saying, "What's this? This is really cool." And
it's kind of an awesome thing in Nashville because there's such a high bar to have hit writers because we have a lot of traffic in our studio of hit writers and producers, and to have people actually sticking their head in my studio and being like, "What is that?"
Right.
Yeah.
that sounds really cool and different. And,
Right.
most of them know Troy very well and have used Troy as a vocalist for stuff. I'm like, is that Troy Johnson's voice? And that sounds really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, the inception of the band was sort of, we wanted to direct it towards a cinematic flavor, to have, maybe opportunity to get on some movies and some TV shows and, do that. So that was our first foray into, how do we write a song together and what is this going to sound like? And so I think we've been able to carve out a pretty unique sound that incorporates all of those elements: the country element, the rock element, the not techno element, but a more modern loop oriented element, and
orchestral
and right,
cinematic,
right,
mixed,
yeah, ethereal type stuff, and broad lyrics that people can inject themselves into.
Yeah.
Wow, fantastic. You guys are so inspiring, such great stories. So, can you please tell me how you came up with the name Nashvillains? Please, I gotta know.
That's Brett.
It kind of, I wish it was a better story than I just kind of sitting there thinking about it and wanted to do a dark outlaw country band. I had heard Troy's voice. I was doing that movie Forever My Girl, and I just kind of sat there. I was like, Nashvillains. That's a really cool name. I don't know. It just kind of popped in my head.
He was drunk one night and slurring his words is what he was doing.
I could have been. That could be a true story. And, I went and checked, and I couldn't believe it. No one had taken it. And so immediately trademarked it, and we were just like, this is it. I got to use this, and I got to get Troy. And Scott and I had talked about it, and I told Scott about it when I met him in LA, and he was like, "That's a great name. We should definitely approach Troy with it." And that's, but it wasn't much more to it than that. I wish there was a better story, and maybe I'll have to make one up.
Yeah, maybe
we are songwriters.
I started my journey searching for a band name in LA.
Yeah.
And I started heading east. I made it over the mountain.
I was driving to Vegas in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. I put Nashville and villain in a band name generator online.
It wasn't that sexy. It was more just like, hey, that's a good name.
There were a couple names bouncing around, but we kept going back to Nashville.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Wow, that's a great name. And you might not think that's a great story, but I think all names have some kind of purpose and reason for coming about, and that one did. So great job, Brett. Since you three are incredible hit songwriters, let's dive deeper. So Troy, can you please read a fantastic quote by Dustin Lynch?
I draw inspiration from anything and everybody, and that's what country music is to me. Real life stories and real life emotions.
I love this quote because I think what really drew me to country music was, the truth and the emotion and the story. So can each of you speak on your own personal connections to this quote?
A lot of us, we used to walk around with what we call hook books. Now we just use our cell phones. So we're always looking for inspiration, just walking around, driving around, and we just jot down notes, and then you'll find a title that you like, and you start piecing that story together. Or I do it just going throughout my day.
Right.
I'll say, oh, that line will work with that. That thought will work with that. And then when I get, I don't know, several of those thoughts together, I will actually sit down with an instrument and start hammering it out. And then you just take the truth and lie about it is what you do.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I think we all pretty much write the same way. At least, when you grow up in Nashville, and musically speaking, that's the way they do it around here. And I think that's a really good way to do it. It's a lot different than, I've written with, West Coast and East Coast people, and they just do it different. And I'm proud and glad that I, was taught how to write a country song, or at least the best I can. Yeah. And part of the reason I like it is I find it to be a puzzle.
Yeah.
And, I actually do like doing puzzles. I'm kind of 85 in my heart, I think. So, but I watch the Game Show Network and do puzzles. But
I think one of the things that's important, like for me, is have to put myself in the situation of the
Yes,
song.
You have to be the
Yes.
character.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I have to find a
Right.
place in my life where I relate to what we're writing about, and that kind of thing has happened to me. I think, like when we were doing this album, like I was going through a lot of dark stuff in my life, and I think that a lot of that came out musically for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And
We kept saying, "Cheer up, buddy."
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. But but I do think you do have to put yourself into the situation of your own life, and you do have to take inspiration from everything around you, good and bad.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
Songwriting and acting are a lot alike. You have to become that character.
Yeah,
You
it's
know?
almost like you're reading my mind. I was thinking
Yeah.
the exact same thing. I'm fascinated with the acting world, and would love to know how to do that. And I think partly that is what we do
Yeah.
as songwriters. I know as a demo singer, I sort of put on a character to whatever song I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I don't have very many. I have maybe two. One that's country and one that's not as country.
Yeah.
But
I think, like, for me, like, even Tumbling Down, one of our last singles, like that song, I was recovering from cancer at the time, so it was like that song was very autobiographical about what was going on in my life at the time.
Yeah.
So that was kind of an interesting, perspective on it.
It's funny. Kevin Costner and I were just speaking about the same thing.
You were not. You actually were, I'm sure. Yeah. You ran into him or met him a couple of weeks ago.
Troy and I wrote a song with a guy named Jack Williams and Kevin Costner for an album called Tales from Yellowstone. So
go out and get Tales from Yellowstone.
Yes. Song
from
called
Kevin Costner. What's the name of his band?
Modern West.
Modern West,
Yeah.
right.
Song called Won't Stop Loving You. But I got invited to a show with him and his band a few weeks ago. Me and my wife went up, hung out with him for a bit.
Yeah.
Really nice fella.
Yeah, I bet he's pretty inspiring.
Yeah. And we were talking about that very same thing.
I bet. I bet. Yeah, he likes to talk about himself, doesn't he? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I saw the opportunity for a joke.
Everybody else talks about him plenty.
So that was all fantastic. I love all your perspectives. I love how you guys were bringing up, the whole acting side of it and having to really get into a character for country music to get that story across and that authenticity. And that's a perfect transition into writing for commercial country stars, which all of you have done, because in that case, you're not writing for yourself, you're writing for another artist. So can you guys share a little bit about your journey of being in that position of writing for another artist and hearing your songs performed by these incredible artists on country radio?
When y'all go first on that?
Go ahead.
The first time that I heard the Chicks the producer of the Chicks invited me out to Blake Chansey invited me out to have a drink with him, and he took me to his car to hear the mix of what they did. It was after they had it was during the mix session, I guess, and they hadn't mastered it or anything. And so I was like, man, this is pretty amazing to hear your song sung by a platinum selling artist or I mean, it was a real joy. But when it comes to writing for someone in particular, I personally find it pretty difficult. I know that there's a lot of great songwriters that can do that can hear an Eric Church in their head, and they say, what would he say? Now I can do like, what would he say? But I can't do like, well, how would he sound, and how would he?
And you have to do that in Nashville. Because you get pitch sheets.
Yeah.
And they say these artists are recording in the next 2 months, 3 months.
That's not the only way to do it, because there is another way to do it. I mean, what I was going to say was a lot of times a writer will find an artist, or an artist will find a writer that they just connect with, like Ronnie Millsap and Mike Reed.
Right.
They just
Bernie Taupin and Elton John.
Right. Exactly. Same type of thing where I think Mike's a singer and he sings really well, and he just wrote what Mike would do, and Ronnie found him and said, and they
that's
were
what Ronnie
similar.
would do too,
and that's what Ronnie would do too, and a lot of times that will happen.
Yeah.
And I think that is mostly the case these days. To get cuts these days, you are writing with the artist for the most part.
Yeah, I was going to say,
or the producer. I mean, those are like the two.
Most of the artists, when I say most, I mean like 95% of the artist cuts that I've had, I wrote with the artist.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and
therein
lies the benefit of living in Nashville.
Right.
Being a writer in Nashville, if you're writing country, I mean, the artists are here, or pop in LA.
Yeah.
You get people get in these camps.
Yeah.
Of they're in the Ariana Grande camp in LA, or they're in the Jason Aldean camp in Nashville.
That's why they say you got to be present to win. That's part of it.
Yeah.
That's part of it. You got to schmooze with them. You got to connect with them. You got to, be at events with them. And I'm sure that's true with pretty much every industry.
Lots of great wisdom. Yeah, that's fantastic. So for your band, when you started writing songs for you, that's definitely different than writing for another artist, because you're writing a song that you guys will perform. So can you share more about the journey of the co-writing among you three to write these songs, and maybe some challenges that you faced?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is
sitting right to the right of us.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
It's all Brett's fault.
Brett's our biggest challenge. No,
so one of the biggest challenges for me, and I'm going to assume I can speak for Troy here too, but we were always writing for artists. So when we started writing for Nashvillains, we wanted it to be really cinematic,
syncable,
and syncable.
Ooh, I like that, syncable.
Yeah. Syncable for film and TV.
Yeah.
So we had to write more broadly, and I know especially for me, it took me a couple writing appointments to really wrap my mind around what we were wanting to do here.
Less furniture, more emotion.
Yeah, everything broad strokes.
Right. It's almost opposite of what you do for a writing session for a pop country singer, because the more furniture you have in the song, the cooler it kind of can sound. You have all these unique pieces of what we mean by furniture is all the details in the lyric.
Nashville songwriting is so detailed.
Yeah.
In an awesome way. It's storytelling.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can certainly go overboard.
Yeah.
But yeah, the more detail you can put, the more things that the listener can see in their mind, the better that it tends to be.
Right. And the first couple songs we wrote turned out amazing. Well, it was just me and Troy would throw out a line, especially me would throw out a line, and Brett would go, "No, it's too specific." So we'd have to go and rework it and come back and tweak it a little more, and then throw something else out. Okay, that's perfect. So it was just it was a learning curve. So after a couple writing appointments, I knew exactly what we were going after, and I didn't have to send it through the filter so much.
Right. Yeah. Well, you'd filter yourself.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because, I started in Nashville, but I got away from that type of writing for a while. And in Nashville, lyric is king, for sure. And when you're writing pop music and you're writing film and TV music, emotion is king. Which basically means music is king. So that's why,
because the music can make you feel something.
Yeah, and that's why, and I come from a world of scoring and stuff as well. So, like when I come to writing sessions, I'm usually coming with a melody and a musical hook.
Right.
That's kind of like more my thing, right?
Yeah.
So, and then these guys are so in tune with writing great lyrics and just working each line and working it, which I do that too. But these guys, that's what they've been doing for so long. It's a great combination of styles. And I think that's kind of what makes our songs what they are.
Right. Well, I mean, I would say the ultimate goal is to marry as best you can the music side and the lyric side. One of the examples I used for that idea is the song "Ghost in This House."
Great song.
I think it's one of the all-time greatest country songs ever.
Me too.
When you get to in the chorus, when you get to the part where he goes, that towards the end, I'm just a ghost in this house, right in the 80 miles, I got these on. It only took my body and soul. I'm just a ghost. I mean, when you get to that point, and that is the climax of the melody and the lyric.
Yeah.
That is magic. That is magic.
It is a great song.
So anyway, that's an example of what I was just talking about.
That's amazing. I think it's so cool how you were able to make that transition from writing more lyrical and story-driven music to this, you know. And I think that just shows your growth as writers as well, and your expansion and being able to do that, because, you know, you had all this experience writing for hit country artists, but you're on this fresh new journey now, and you were able to find a sound that's unique and perfect for you guys, and I think that's fantastic.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
We've enjoyed it for sure.
Yeah. So can you share a little bit about your album, Tumbling Down? I know it's a concept album, so can you talk about the whole concept you hope this album portrays to your listeners?
Brett?
You know, I would say the overall arc of this album is about how one bad decision in your life can affect you throughout your life.
Oh, wow.
And that's kind of what happened, what this whole album is about from the first song.
Especially if you keep making bad decisions.
Yeah. But, you know, but the story is this guy can't escape his first mistake that he made. And that happens in the first song of the album. So that, but it also is relatable to, I think, a lot of people when they've done something in their life, they just can't escape and can't get past.
Yeah, and the outer struggle turns into inner struggle, and you know, there's all kinds of you know, song ideas in that.
Yeah. And he tries to get past it. He falls in love, you know, and then the girl he's with finds out about what he did earlier and his earlier addictions in his life and things like that, and he ends up she finds out about him, she turns him in. You know, that's, and she has to wrestle with doing that for herself, turning in the love of her life. But it was so egregious what this guy did, she can't live with herself to not turn him in, because she's a good person, she has to turn him in. So again, it's affecting him.
It's basically a Hallmark movie.
On the dark web. Well, as we were writing these songs, we saw a narrative kind of flowing through them, so we just sort of put them together in that way.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I love it. I love it. I love it. Congratulations on the album. I cannot wait for the whole world to hear it. I've already heard it, thanks to Juliana, but I can't wait for the rest of the world to hear. But I have one more question for the three of you. So, what is the biggest lesson you've learned so far being songwriters in this industry?
You got to go out and party with everybody to make it. And that's not really who I am necessarily. That's been my struggle.
It's a new podcast. Bad advice from Troy Johnson.
Yeah.
You know, I hear a lot of people, a lot of songwriters and people in our industry complaining about not being able to make as much money anymore because of streaming and things like that. But I think the biggest lesson I've learned is you have to find a way to change with the times. And money is out there, and you just have to learn how to change your business model as a professional writer to get that money. So that money is still there. It may not be in the same way that it used to be out there with CD sales and terrestrial radio as much. But now you've got, you know, for example, you had terrestrial radio, but now you've got distribution worldwide with the click of a keyboard. So, you know, there's a lot of ways to take advantage of how the industry has actually changed and make a substantial amount of money.
Yeah, when it comes to the individual songwriter, the income stream has definitely changed. It's just it's turned into, if you want money, you got to do something live.
Yeah.
The days where you can you know, you can have money, mailbox money come in because you were on a record or had a couple of songs on a record that weren't even singles. You could have, you know, back in the day, you know, 20, 30 years ago, you could live off of that. And now that's not the case. And so you have to change, just like Brett was saying, you have to change how you present yourself to the world. And now there's a emphasis on doing something live, whether it be digital or not.
Yeah.
I would say, you know, personally, another thing I've had to learn is how to writing with the same two guys over and over and over and over and over again. You've got to learn how to compromise and take suggestions from everyone, and
Right.
not just be the single cook in the kitchen, which is
Mhm.
it's tough for all of us, because all three of us, write by ourselves and write for other projects and write with other people and everything else. And that is definitely something that is a personal growth thing.
Well, that's good. Well, you got to see him again tomorrow. You can't burn a bridge.
You were asking about, would you say advice for songwriters? Is that what you said?
What'd you learn the most?
What'd you learn the most about my songwriting journey?
Yeah.
I got lost in what Brett and Troy were talking about, and I forgot the question.
Yeah, what have you learned the most from your songwriting journey?
To listen.
Listen. To always remember the
Open
question.
up my ear, take the cotton out of my ear.
To always remember the question that's been asked. Now, I would say my songwriting journey is taking the opportunities that lay before you has gotten me here. Sending your songs out to people. If I hadn't have taken the notion to send a song to Frank Larry on Facebook Messenger, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Man, that's a good point. I mean, it's amazing how many incredible writers that I know, I'm sure you guys as well, where they're amazing writers, but they're not good at getting their songs out.
Right.
And they're not that's another part of your job. Like,
Yeah.
You
got to be your best salesman.
Yeah, the writing part's only the first half.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. I'm not a very good salesman. Yeah, and that's been a really tough thing to learn how to do. And I still don't really do it very well. I just expect everybody to come to me.
Oh.
Yeah,
Wow.
but we don't need to turn this into a therapy session, right?
Wow. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing that. It was an honor having the three of you on. Before we go, can you share with the listeners where they can find you online and check out your incredible music?
Absolutely. You can find us at nashvillainsband.com. Make sure you switch the A and the I. That's how you spell villain. Nashvillainsband.com is
not
our...
not billion. But
Yeah, not Villian, but villain. Anyway, and we also have YouTube, Facebook, all the social media sites. You can find our music on Spotify and Apple Music and any other streaming site that you might have. That's all out there.
You can give them our PayPal info too if they just want to send money.
Okay, we'll put a link in the comments section.
Yeah, you can subscribe to our videos on YouTube.
Right.
Yeah. And definitely subscribe on Spotify and
Right.
Apple Music.
And we accept crypto also.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you guys so much. This was such a delight. You guys are fantastic, hilarious, so much wisdom and inspiration. So thank you guys so much for joining me. Everybody, please go check out Nashvillains and their incredible new album, Tumbling Down. And of course, until next time,
Stay
right on track.